Welcome everyone to another Spotlight session. Incredibly excited about today's session, and we are welcomed and privileged to be welcomed with Bruce Deel, who is the founder and CEO of City Refuge. City Refuge is a non-for-profit organization focused on offering wraparound restorative services for the marginalized, including individuals and families experience homelessness, as well as survivors of sex trafficking and exploitation. For the past 24 years, Bruce has led the organization as it impacts the Westside of Atlanta in one of Georgia's most challenged neighbourhoods. Bruce, I'm going to touch on this before I hand it over to you, because you talked a lot about vision very early up front, but the services that you include are offering medical, vision, dental, and mental health services, residential programs, which I'll talk about something personal on that from my side, with something my mother did. Actually, a private school and daycare, as well as workforce innovation hub, providing employment training and placement. Bruce also serves on multiple non-profit boards and provides consulting services to churches, non-profits, NGOs around the country. First of all, Bruce, welcome to Spotlight.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm honored to be one of your guests today.
Yeah, very cool. So when we looked at your profile, we were very eager to get you on for a number of reasons. And then we were having a good chat before the show, and you're talking very much about vision and direction and the way that you lead your businesses. And one of the areas you talked about was the spirit of excellence. And I'd love for you to share more about that with us.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. And again, our core values are passion, excellence, dignity, and integrity. And that excellence piece is so critical, especially in the nonprofit NGO world. So what I've discovered over the years, a lot of those in the poverty alleviation field approach that from a poverty mentality themselves. Mm-hmm. So they feel like there's limited resources, limited impact to be had, limited number of funds. And that's not the way we approach it. We want to give the individuals who visit our campus, live on our campus, participate in our programs, the highest level of service possible. So really highly qualified staff, incredible food service, a great place to live, high quality tech opportunities on campus around IT and the job training. So we just really feel like if we're going to give other individuals a belief about themselves that they can be more than they are today, we have to treat them with that same spirit of excellence and expectation and help convince them that a better road is in front of them.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I apologize up front for this question. Let's go back all those years, as we all have to do these days. Let's go back all these years. How did you get into this space?
Yeah, well, that's I was a clergyman, so I was in ministry for 14 years on staff at churches, and was actually asked to come downtown Atlanta on a 6-month consulting assignment to close a little church and sell the property. Our 5th or 6th Sunday in, a young lady in crisis walked in and asked for help. We said yes. She came back the next week with somebody else in crisis. They came back the next week. So literally walked in 4 months into a 6-month assignment. And this little building was filled up with 100 drug addicts, alcoholics, homeless folks, people running from the law, all kind of issues going, can you help us? Yeah. And so my wife and I just sort of had a conversation and said, this is not a 6-month assignment. This looks like a rest of our life assignment. Yeah. Yeah. And so it was not something we had planned. It was literally just something that unfolded before us.
Yeah, man, you're giving me goosebumps. You're really giving me goosebumps. And so when you started out, so City of Refuge, is that something you started out with, or is that something that evolved much later?
No, it's once I realized I was going to resign my comfortable position and move downtown to take on this little church, I started City Refuge at the same time, because I knew right up front that the kind of work that we were going to do was not really going to be accepted or welcome in traditional religious environments. Yes, right? Because we were going to be dealing with folks at the deepest level of crisis in their life, and it would make a lot of people uncomfortable. And so we started City of Refuge 24 years ago because we knew the path was going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, wow. And so when you talk about values, this is really interesting, because you touch on quite a few areas in relation to how you support people and situations. It's not just one dimensional. It's not just housing. It's not just food. It's actually quite a few different areas. So talk about how your values play a role in all parts of the business.
Well, so for 6 years, we actually lived in that church. My wife, my 5 daughters, and I lived there. And during those times, we had a lot of folks live with us, and we had a lot of other experiences with crime and threats on my life and all kind of things. And we started to understand that this is not an easy journey to move from homelessness or addiction or whatever the case may be. It requires multiple services, resources being made available. And the way we have done this work and historically in nonprofits is I would do one piece and you would do one piece and somebody else would do another piece.
Yes.
And we just figured out that's not how it works. If you can do what we call a one-stop shop, if you can bring all those resources on one campus, and you can approach individuals with a great level of passion about where they've been, but more important about where they're going. You can do that service at an excellent level. You practice dignity. Everybody gets treated the same, from the largest donor to the person at the deepest level of crisis. Yeah. And you practice integrity. So we are good stewards of every dime, dollar, or volunteer hour. And then you model that in front of them, and this thread runs through all the resources and services we provide. And it doesn't take long for individuals to start going, I'm worth something. I'm valuable. I have meaning because these people are investing this at this level in my life. And so rather than treating them as second-class citizens, we're on equal playing field the moment they walk onto our campus.
Yeah, wow. That's I love it. And so let's talk about, I'm not getting off the core values right now. So let's go through those individually. And I part of what we do at stratapp is how do we bring to life values? How do we bring to life missions? How do we bring to life the common why, right? Whether it's companies or individuals, and then how do we bring together the direction? Your core values, do you mind if we just go through each one, and then how have you led them through all parts of the business? And even those values are on steel to the people that you help.
Yeah, so we have 4 core values. And so number 1 is passion. It's a little bit of a running joke with us that I tell my team, you have to feel this. If you don't feel it, this work will kill you. If you do feel it, it might kill you, but you'll enjoy dying, right? So you have to feel this. This is not something that you do as a vocation. This is something you do sort of as a life calling. And you happen to get compensated for it, right? So I want people to show up energetic every day for work. And if they're not energetic about their work, then it's my responsibility as the leader to either help them find another place on our team where they can be energetic, or help them identify another place where they can be energetic. I do a disservice to my team if I allow them to work without passion in their life for the work. Second, as I've already mentioned, the excellent aspect. We happen to be a faith-based organization, and as a faith-based organization, we're going to do this at the highest level possible, right? Because that's my position in life. City of Refuge is not a faith-based organization, but that's my position. So if I'm going to do it in the name of God, I'm going to do it at the highest level possible, and my team is as well. Dignity. Everybody is equal value here, right? And so so many individuals that come to our program have been beat down in so many ways. So the trafficker talked to them like they were trash. The dealer treated them bad. The parents that abused them, whatever the case may be. We don't want a separate identity for them here than our staff or our team have. Everybody's the same. What's your first name, right? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Everybody gets treated that way. And then integrity, unfortunately, one of the things missing in society today is we're too self-serving. Integrity means that we take whatever resource we have and we make sure that it's used for the good of the community, not just the good of the individual. And so that's what I mean by integrity, that whatever resource that comes to this campus here on the west side of Atlanta is used for the good of our community. And nobody could ever say that you benefited personally versus the community benefiting from the resources that come.
Yes, yeah. And so you said something earlier as well about it's not going to be easy.
Right.
And I think sometimes we actually get caught in the fact that I was having this conversation around the dinner table with my kids last night, where I think that we just want it to be easy, and we don't acknowledge that it's not going to be easy up front. Therefore, we can put the plan in place to get where we want to go. So whether it's a short-sighted of actually what the longest term view looks like, so where do we want to be in 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, or whether it's just such self-serving and instant gratification now to keep on appeasing people on what they need out of this, as opposed to we actually are on a journey, and the journey's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So, hey, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I own a couple businesses that employ people that come through our program, and I run a nonprofit, and all of the principles lay down everywhere, right? They lay down in the nonprofit, they lay down in the business, they lay down in my family, right? It's never easy, right? But it's worth the effort, right? And so we just have to, when we engage in whatever our role in life or business or family is, an understanding on the front end that this is going to cost me time, talent, and treasure is critical in order to reach a place of success.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that vision of yours, it's something you felt very, when you were young and you saw something, and the fact that you even said, this isn't a 6-month job, this is actually a lifetime journey, and we need to put that plan in place. Can you give us an example? And I really want to focus on your work for a minute, because you touched on something else, that, work is not always what we can get out of it. It's what others can get out of it, and the reason, why we're doing something. Can you share with us a really, successful story of a journey? And obviously you're not going to share names, etc., but love to understand a journey that when you met someone, and what are they doing today?
Yeah, and Ryan doesn't mind me sharing his name. We tell the story publicly. Ryan was he was a member of the Gangster Disciples, 6th Ward Disciples out of Cleveland, Ohio. For 14 years, ran a robbery crew all over the country, in and out of prison, in and out of addiction. Showed up at our campus about 15 years ago now in a place of crisis. A contract had been put out on his life. And the day after we met him, now here you got a guy that's been running a robbery crew for 14 years. The day after we met him, we moved him in our house. And started taking care of him, giving him resources and helping him overcome a lot of issues in life. In a remarkable set of circumstances, he had 7 felonies on his record, and through a series of events, we were able to get his record expunged. And so he went from being a felon, went from being running a robbery crew in and out of jail, to now owns his own security company here in Georgia, provides security all over the city, has dozens of employees. Life is stable, and it still shows up on campus every day. We actually give him office space here at no cost to him, so he can continue to build his business. Has Easter and Christmas with my family every year of the last 15 years. Yeah. Right. And almost got me killed half a dozen times in the journey, because all 15 of those years was he stable. So he would bail on us periodically, and I would have to go find him, and the places I found him were not places where you want to venture into. Oh, wow. And, so rescuing him out again and again. And so it was hard work, and it was draining emotionally, physically, mentally at times. But to your point, it's worth the effort when you see the end result, or at least moving toward the end result of successful in his life, which very few people believed was going to happen. Yeah, yeah. I have a concept called the negative vortex. And the negative vortex, to me, touches all walks of life. And it's the idea of, once you get yourself into an environment that is spiraling down, right, you either make 2 decisions: you continue to believe in that vortex and spiral down, or you actually have the ability to make a different decision. And to me, what you've given is an absolute avenue for people to make a decision. And I'm sure there's lots of examples where people didn't take the opportunity and continued to spiral down, where the opportunity of taking already the initiative these people had. And it happens in our workforce every single day. And I've managed it and coached it, and I've seen it. And now, one young person's a managing director, where the other 2 said, no, short term for me is this, and they were out of jobs within 12 months. Knocking back on the door to come back. Right. But one person believed in their own values and saw the bigger story, and then they went towards it, and they're incredibly successful. Yeah. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Trust First, and the principle behind that was, everywhere we go in life, you have to prove yourself before you're accepted. So you and I were chatting about rugby earlier, or football, baseball here. You have to try out for a team. You go to a job, you have to go through an interview process, right? You want to go to college, you have to fill out an application, essays, and go through an interview. Our principle here at City Refuge is, we're going to trust you until you prove to us we can't trust you. So it's just flipping that switch. It's what you're talking about. We understand they're coming from a negative vortex.
Yes.
Life has been wrong and bad decisions been made or inflicted on them. Well, that's not what we start with. We don't start with where you've been and what you've done. We start with where do you want to go and what's the path to get there. Literally, when you just flip that switch, it ignites something in employees or in people in crisis or whatever the case may be when we extend trust to them on the front end versus requiring them to prove that we can trust them.
Yes, yeah, I love that. Our best leadership book was around how a leader was brought into a business and he sat and observed just for 30 days. Didn't say anything. And what he was observing was individuals, because he already knew where he wanted to take the business, but he wanted to make sure that everyone was in the right role and responsibility.
Right.
And going to your point, were they motivated to do what they were doing? Right. And once they're motivated, it's not a job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it's passion. It fuels, and you've created that environment. So what I'd love to actually, help you share with us now is leadership. You're obviously are you a natural leader? Were you a leader as a young man through university and stuff? Or
yeah, I think I'm a natural leader. I'm a much better leader than I used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've always been a bit of a leader.
Yeah. And so what are the things that now, I mean, looking now, and if you're giving advice to yourself 20, 30 years ago to help you accelerate faster, what would be 2 or 3 of those pieces of advice?
Yeah. So I have only 3 leadership principles. So these are the 3 leadership principles I live by. Number 1 is the leader. It's my responsibility to overstate the expectations. Mm-hmm. Right. So I never want a team member to be able to come back to me and say, I didn't know you expected this of me. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. So I overstate the expectations. In an interview, I paint the job much more difficult than it actually is. And,
right.
The requirements, so overstate it. The second place is where I missed it for a long time. My second principle, as the leader, it's also my responsibility to provide the resources to make sure the individual can meet the expectations that I have set for them.
Yeah.
So where I failed as a leader early on, and some others I coach still struggle with, is I set the expectation, but then I didn't provide any resource. And so then they didn't meet the expectation I had set, and I blame them when the fact of the matter is they were limited in their resource.
Yes.
So overstate the expectation, I provide the resource. And then my third leadership principle is celebrate victory early and often and challenge failure early and often. Right. Mm-hmm. So I celebrate everything my staff does. I mean, the smallest of things gets a big shout out of celebration, but I also challenge failure the first time it happens. I don't let a pattern of not meeting the expectations develop. Yes. So those are the 3 things that I've honed over the years that work well for me now. That I've had some tough lessons along the way, but I've got a formula that works for me now.
Yes. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we're going to definitely share that for young leaders. And it's interesting because your second point was one of the motivational elements of why we actually built Strata. It was basically, we ask a lot as leaders, and I was a young, managing director. I've told this story a couple of times, but I was a young managing director opening up markets in Asia, Singapore and Hong Kong, and I was hiring people a lot more experienced than I was because that was part of my answer. I'm 8, 12 hours away from these locations. So what do? You get experienced people. And we would talk about the plan and everyone would sort of sit down and, okay, I understand it. This is what we're going to do, and would nod. And then you would go 3 months, 6 months and realize you're not getting where you anticipated you're going to get based on the fact. And it was really the second round of hiring and firing that I realized is I wasn't enabling them with the tools and the resources to be successful. What I was asking them to do was deliver on their best efforts. Mm-hmm. Right. And I was managing, 8, 12 hours away doing the best I could as a leader. And that was really the idea. Well, how do we bring live interactive connectivity and insights to information so we can both move together and not you move together and then I retrospectively catch up as a leader.
Sure.
So it was really nothing to do with the leader side. It was more about how do I enable them with the tools to be better at what they do. Right, and the resources to be better at what they do. So that's really interesting. And the celebrate part, I love very much. So I'd love to digress to your people leadership, because you touched on your structure of leadership and then the lives that you have impacted, we could sit here all day, I think, talk about that, which is very fulfilling for you. And I can see the smile on your face now. I think you would love to keep on talking about that, because that's what drives you. And that's what's inspired me throughout this conversation. But how do you then instill ownership to your team? And let's focus on your team for a minute, because your leadership philosophies are really sound, but really ultimately this comes down to everyone owning their piece of the journey. And how do you really lead that piece?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things I do there. One is I talk about giving your best effort and your best attitude in the moment. So your best attitude, your best effort in the moment, and not comparing your area of responsibility or oversight to anybody else's on campus. This is yours. You give your best attitude and effort here, and that will prepare you for the future to be a better leader. And it will also help you overcome whatever's in the past, right? So I try to teach my team, don't look at the failures of yesterday, except to learn a lesson, right? So whatever lesson you can learn. And don't be too forward thinking. We want to be forward thinking, but everything in our life is evolving at such a rapid pace that if you're too forward thinking, you miss the moment. So that's a big deal for me, is to live in the moment. The second thing is we talk a lot around here about moral ownership. And so if you're coming here and you're going to be a part of the transformation, literally, of people's lives, then you need to own that journey with them, right? This is not a corporate journey. This is an individual journey. So everybody on our campus, from the security guard that greets people when they walk on, to the food service, to the counselor that's going to help them with their trauma, everybody should own that relationship at that moment. And we just call it moral ownership. We say, hey, as a part of your value system, own this person's journey. Now that may cost you emotionally, to your point. We have more failures than successes. We never deny that, right? The number of people we deal with that don't get it is higher than the number that do. So we don't spend a lot of time on the failures. We spend a whole lot of time celebrating the successes. But and so repeating myself a lot is important. I think good leaders, we just have to say the same thing over and over and over.
Be consistent.
Some things aren't taught, they're caught. Right. So we can sit in a seminar for an hour and I can teach, but it doesn't work. Somewhere along the journey, when I say it 100 times, they finally catch it.
No, I love that. And so I typically wrap up by giving a brief of all the things that we've learned. But I'm going to be honest with you, there's a lot of good things in this discussion, and I probably wouldn't get through it all. But your core values for me are just absolutely brilliant. And we'll definitely be sharing those. And the excellence one, obviously, you're highly passionate about. Well, all of them you're highly passionate about, but excellence as well. Your leadership structure, to me, is just, I'm a 3-level person. I do everything in 3s. And you seem similar to that. You've just got everything, and then you can repeat that. And then the way that you empower ownership. I've got this word, power, empowerment. We talk a lot as leaders, but do we truly empower people to do the things that they do? But the way you simplify how to actually embrace it, I wish I was on your team right now, because you actually give the ability to it's so simple, understand it, and then I can put the pieces in play. But you also seem those, you give a lot of autonomy to your team as well, to really take ownership of that execution of what they do. And obviously you've got an open door policy as well. As we wrap up, because you and I could, and I'm going to say it in my closing after this, but as we wrap up, because this goes out to leaders all around the world, this podcast. And so is there anything else that sort of is burning within you right now that you would love to share with the audience?
I'd just say this, leadership is such a heavy responsibility. We've got people following us, their livelihood as a result of our position in their life. Their place of security or satisfaction is often associated with their employment. We're in charge of that. That can become really heavy. So I would just challenge all of us as leaders to make sure we have our own outlets where we get places of recreation and solitude and meditation. And we don't allow the weight of leadership to make us less of a leader than we should be. Make sure we're feeding our spirits, our souls, our minds, our physical well-being, And that makes us better leaders. And as better leaders, we have greater influence in those we lead.
Yeah, I love that. And just on closing, 5 daughters and 8 grandchildren.
5 daughters, 3 married, 1 getting married 3 days from now.
Yeah, okay, great.
8 grandchildren,
Congratulations.
one on the way. 7 of those 8 are boys, age 5 and under. So my life is full.
And doing everything that you're doing. Well, we cannot thank you enough for joining us, Bruce. And I really want to. I'm gonna self-impose an invitation here. I'm looking forward to visiting the campus one day when I get over there next year. And I'd love to meet with you and the team and the work that you're doing. The work that you're doing is just nothing short of inspirational. But thank you very much for sharing your journey, and also the areas of the way that you lead through pure clarity, clear purpose, and the way that you actually take everybody along for the journey, not just the people within your organization, your growing family as well, which is obviously a big part of your why, but also the people that you impact is just simply inspirational. So, mate, thank you very much for joining Spotlight.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for all the good you're sowing into leaders around the world.
Good man. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you.